The Ukrainian Armed Forces Unmanned Aerial Vehicle Forces in Donbass have carried out a targeted strike on a rare North Korean-made multiple-launch rocket system, the M1991. This is the first confirmed case of such equipment being destroyed by the Ukrainian military. The operation took place in the Novopavlovsk direction. Operators of the 413th Raid Battalion used an attack drone to hit the vehicle from behind. As a result of the strike, the M1991 ammunition detonated and one of the missiles pierced the cabin, in which there were 2 Russian servicemen. Judging by the video published by the fighters, both were seriously injured and fell out. After the cabin was penetrated, a chain reaction began. The entire vehicle detonated powerfully. The installation was completely destroyed. The M1991 MLRS is a North Korean analog of the Soviet Uragan, but with an increased caliber of 240 mm and a range of up to 60 kilometers. The presence of such vehicles in service with the Russian forces became known only in April 2025. Then, the first video of this equipment appeared on the internet. The operators of the 413th Battalion who completed the mission gave emotional comments about their work. You are from St. Petersburg, driving a Korean missile system. You have a bunch of 240mm M1991 MLRS missiles behind you. You are going to bomb the Ukrainians. But suddenly the gods of war shove this missile where only a bottle used to hit. Your burnt panties and t-shirt fly off. Live on air. The driver next to you falls out of the truck. She drives over him. This will happen to every occupier. Every driver of a Russian MLRS should see this video. The military wrote. Earlier, Special Operations Forces burned a North Korean KN-09 in Kursk region. KN-09 was initially burned by a HIMARS rocket launcher. The strike completely destroyed the North Korean launcher. The KN-09 is a North Korean 300mm rocket artillery system. The launcher consists of 8 rockets. The strike range of the launcher is 180 to 200 kilometers. It is currently unknown how many KN-09s North Korea has transferred to the Russian army. The head of the Chechen Republic, Ramzan Kadirov, never tires of coming up with extravagant initiatives, and what is most interesting is that he gets away with it. The initiative to limit travel abroad for officials is considered Ramzan Akhmatovich's personal opinion. Russian political expert Sergei Markedonov said this. The situation is made more piquant by the fact that on the eve of the publication of his creative idea, the head of Chechnya is paying a visit to the United Arab Emirates. In general, trips to the Middle East, not only to perform the Hajj or discuss investment projects, but also to attend prestigious horse races or Formula One auto races, are not uncommon for the head of Chechnya. However, unlike trips by individual Russian deputies to the United States, these visits are outside the focus of the Foreign Ministry or patriots from the State Duma and the presidential administration. He adds, the Republic under Kadyrov's leadership has become an important political symbol for Vladimir Putin, who came to power under the slogans of pacifying the Caucasus and fighting terrorism. One should not forget that Kadyrov's cruelty is in many cases countered by no less cruelty on the part of the forest people. However, the Chechen Stabilization Medal also has a downside. Columbia University professor Kimberly Martin, in a special work devoted to the organization of regional government in transitional societies, used such a capacious definition as outsourced sovereignty. In economic dictionaries, outsourcing is understood as the transfer of some functions of an organization to external performers, highly qualified specialists of an outside company. In Chechnya, the process of regional governance was taken under control by a specialized organization called the Administration of Ramzan Kadirov. It removed significant responsibility from Moscow for the methods and costs of the pacification process. But the price of the issue was the political independence of the Republican elite, which is essentially building a state within a state. Kadyrov himself perceives his status as a consequence of some kind of personal union between him and Putin, and instead of comprehensively integrating the Republic into the all-Russian space, he promotes its isolation. Thus, the most important task of today remains the real arrival of the Russian state in the North Caucasus, not as trusted agents and administrative businessmen, but as an integrating force, a fair arbiter and guarantor of security. Take, for example, such a story as the conscription of young men from the North Caucasian republics into the Russian army. Every year, this problem is hotly debated, but not resolved. Meanwhile, in a multi-ethnic state, the conscription army is becoming not just a power structure, but the most important tool for integrating different segments of society. We should not forget that for the overpopulated Caucasus, with its high unemployment, the army can become a good social lift and a real alternative to the underground and criminal business. If cardinal changes do not occur, then Kadyrov's methods will be increasingly in demand, and the unity of the country will become even more illusory, Sergei Makedonov says. While the Kremlin talks about stability and the return to greatness, the reality is much darker. An impoverished population, soaring prices, empty refrigerators, and increasing poverty in Russia. All this is the direct price of Putin's protracted military adventure, and Russians are paying for the war in potato lines, experts say. As Reuters writes, it is pensioners and the poor who have become the main victims of Russia's protracted invasion of Ukraine. Real pensions are falling, prices are rising, and the authorities are reporting income growth. But these figures hide a cruel truth. A third of Russians, tens of millions of people, are already living below the poverty line, barely making ends meet. The products that an elderly person's diet is based on are becoming more expensive every month. Potatoes are up 60%. Beets, carrots, cabbage, onions are up 40 to 70% since the beginning of the year. At the same time, pensions are indexed more slowly than inflation, and real incomes feel like they are falling. According to the Center for Macroeconomic Analysis, CMASF, the real size of pensions, if calculated according to the so-called inflation for the poor, has decreased by 6% over the year, despite the official increase from Rosstat of 1.1%. But Rosstat is showing an increase in income, and behind the scenes, every fifth family has lost out in the new economy. Almost two-thirds of Russians have no savings, meaning that if they lose their job tomorrow, they will have nothing to pay for food and utilities. Price tags change every week, says 70-year-old Larissa from Moscow. The same idea is heard from everyone. People have fixed incomes and prices behave like a stock exchange, only not on the growth of capital, but on the zeroing of human dignity. The Central Russian Bank admits that the poor feel inflation twice as much. The head of the central bank, Elvira Nabulina, admitted in June that our people do not buy TVs every day. They buy food, which means they feel the crisis differently. The expected inflation for the poor is 14 to 17%. The official target is 4%. The gap is not just in percentages, it is in destinies. The main conclusion that is becoming increasingly obvious is that Russia has entered a regime of military redirection of resources. Everything that used to go to pensions, subsidies, food, transport is now going to the defense industry. Prices are rising because there is less food in warehouses and more ammunition. Today, Putin is not only a foreign policy isolator, but also an economic collapse for his own people. Russia is once again turning into a country with rationing inflation and inflation for the poor. Only now all this is not under the heading "the shame of the 90s", but under the tales of imperial revival. Now, with this trend, a food riot in Russia is not ruled out. People are more interested in the war in Ukraine. They are demanding bread from President Vladimir Putin.